Hello, everyone, and welcome to AmeriCorps State and National's June monthly grantee call. I'm Colleen Hollahan. For those of you I have not met yet, I am AmeriCorps State and National's training manager and thrilled to be with you today. We certainly have a packed agenda, and before we jump in, I just wanted to note that we sent some pre-call notes yesterday from ASN information at cns.gov, so hopefully you all had a chance to review those and have come with questions if you have them. So to kick us off, I'm going to pass it to our director, Sonali Mijawan, for a welcome and some updates.
Thank you, Colleen. It is lovely to be here with all of you. Happy June and welcome to almost officially summer. I wanted to take a few minutes to provide you all with an update following last week's passing of the Fiscal Responsibility Act. So as folks may know, the President signed the Fiscal Responsibility Act into law on Saturday, June 3rd. As we've heard from the President, default was not an option, and by signing the bill, we averted an economic crisis, an economic collapse, and neither side got everything they wanted out of this deal, but rather what the American people needed. To fulfill our mission to improve lives, strengthen communities, and foster civic engagement through service and volunteering, AmeriCorps took action to obligate and award ARP funds. Our North Star was delivering resources to communities, whether grants or members, and that guided our prioritization and expediting ARP grant making as we were able. Now that the bill has been signed, AmeriCorps is in conversation with OMB to determine the full impact on the agency. While we continue to work through our full grant-making process for all grants, we are temporarily holding on awarding additional ARP-funded grants, with the exception of PHA grants, until we have full clarity. We will continue to work with Congress to advance the President's FY24 budget priorities through the annual appropriations process, which will begin in earnest now that the debt ceiling has been addressed. As part of the debt ceiling bill, Congress agreed that if they don't pass all 12 FY24 appropriations bills by January 1st, 2024, there will be a continuing resolution with a 1% reduction across the board. We expect Congress to be motivated to move forward with regular order for the FY24 process to pass all appropriation bills in the coming months. We commit to continued transparency as to the funding that has been rescinded and the impact of those rescissions as soon as we have completed the process that all agencies are all undergoing in partnership with OMB. We appreciate your understanding and partnership, and thank you for your continued support of AmeriCorps. I imagine that there are a lot of questions that people may have. At this moment, I don't have a lot of answers to provide. What we've shared today is what we have to share with you all. As I shared, we will commit to continuing to be transparent and to share with you information when we are able. So I'll stop there. And if there are any questions, we can take them now, or we can take them later. So I don't know if we see any hands raised or any questions in the chat or in the Q&A.
I do not see any hands up or questions.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Again, welcome everyone. We do have a lot of great information to share with you all today, but I did want to make sure that folks were informed of the Fiscal Responsibility Act. All right, I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thanks, Sonali. So our first update, if we can go to the next slide, we have Nancy Ferguson here from the Chief of Program Operations Immediate Office to share an update about our Training and Technical Assistance Survey.
Hi, everyone. During the last week of June, AmeriCorps is releasing an AmeriCorps Partners Training and Technical Assistance Survey. So in anticipation of its release, we want to give you a quick overview of what it is and what to expect. So we are requesting feedback from partners across the agency on the delivery and content of our training and technical assistance, which we refer to as TTA. TTA from AmeriCorps is a combination of live and recorded webinars, on-demand e-learning modules hosted on Litmos, interactions with your portfolio manager and other regional staff, resources located on AmeriCorps.gov, as well as other program-specific training and technical assistance resources. In this survey, programs and organizations will have the opportunity to provide feedback on both general TTA and program-specific TTA. The reason we're conducting this survey is because over the past few years, AmeriCorps has undergone several structural changes that have affected how we deliver TTA to our grantees and sponsors. We're conducting the survey to better understand how our partners access our training and technical assistance and to gauge the effectiveness of our general and program-specific TTA. We encourage any staff member working on your AmeriCorps program to complete the survey. We'd like to collect information from as many different perspectives as possible. So we encourage new and veteran staff in any position to complete the survey. The survey is intended for direct recipients of AmeriCorps resources, so funds or members only. It is not intended for sub-grantees. The survey will be released via GovDelivery the week of June 26th. We are requesting all responses by the end of day, July 31st. So that gives you approximately 5 weeks to complete the survey. Data from the survey will be shared with staff in each program and office. We will use the data to assess training needs and to identify where and how we can improve the content and delivery of our training and technical assistance to grantees and sponsors. The survey will take you approximately 35 minutes to complete. If you work on more than one type of AmeriCorps award, you will be given an opportunity to provide feedback on each type. So if you work on multiple AmeriCorps award types, the survey will take approximately 5 to 10 minutes per award type to complete. So if you have one, 35 minutes. If you have two, you should expect it to take about 45 minutes. Your responses are strictly anonymous and they will not be linked to you, your email, your program, your organization in any way. So we really are just trying to collect honest feedback from you that we can use. It is not a mandatory survey. There are no repercussions to your AmeriCorps program or organization if you do not complete it. However, we highly encourage anyone working on your AmeriCorps programs to take the survey. Your responses will inform how we deliver future training and technical assistance to our grantees and sponsors.
Thanks so much, Nancy. We'll be following up with additional information on the survey and some FAQs as the rollout gets closer. So now we have Adrienne Andrews here from our CEO Immediate Office to share some updates on AmeriCorps' 30th anniversary.
Thanks, Colleen. And thank you, all of our ASN crowd, for inviting me to this call and for all of the work you're doing every day. And that is exactly what we want to celebrate next year. Y'all can move to the next slide. Again, my name is Adrienne. I'm the Deputy Chief of Staff for Strategic Engagement. And so our lanes encompass a lot of the external voices for the agency. And one of the big projects that we are undertaking is celebrating all of us next year. So we want to invite you to the party and help us plan it a little bit as well. You can see we're going to kind of go on a journey of service next year. Each month will be marked by a theme. As you can see here, we're going to launch in September of 2023, which is the anniversary of the signing of the legislation by President Bill Clinton. And then throughout the year, it'll be marked by engagements by us. And then we're also welcoming you to lift up your local service and get as many stories amplified as possible. So my hope is that we are building one collective voice and shouting AmeriCorps from the rooftops, because too many times we're told that it's our best kept secret in this country. So this is just a teaser for what's to come. I will be back later in the summer. But real quick, our objectives for the whole plan: recruitment is a huge focus in everything we're doing. Increasing general public awareness of AmeriCorps and all of the amazing work and our history of service, and growing investments from our philanthropic partners, strengthening ties with our alumni, welcoming folks back into the service network, after 1.25 million alumni out there. We need to be amplifying those voices and bringing in new service champions, and then reinvigorating AmeriCorps as a thought leader in this space. And we have a lot of data that you all are bringing to the table, and a lot of opportunities, I think, in this next year of bringing a lot of folks to the table who aren't normally in conversation. So community leaders who aren't talking to each other, AmeriCorps members across the country and across your communities. So we'll be sharing some toolkits in this, I believe in July, we'll be able to bring that to you. And my hope is to come back and share a few more practical pieces. And just one kind of perspective piece is that 30 years ago, AmeriCorps was a dream and a possibility, and you all have made it happen. Some of you have been around since day one, and some of you are just now picking it up and running with it. And we're excited to celebrate all of that and all of the impact that you all and we are collectively making around the country. So I will look at some questions in the chat, happy to respond there, but want to respect the time on this call. So I will have more to share in the coming months. Thank you all, and thank you for all you're doing every day. Back to you, Colleen.
Thanks, Adrienne. I'm just going to take one question at the top for you, and then if you want to address the other ones in the chat. Will there be dedicated funding for celebrations as there was during the 20th?
Good question. And that is a conversation with, I believe, Jennifer and Sonali we can come back to.
Great. Thanks, Adrienne. Thanks others, and thanks for the excitement. As Adrienne mentioned, we'll be bringing Adrienne back in July. So there will be more information and opportunity for Q&A there as well. So thanks for joining. And we are going to move to the next update. So next we have Tara Wallen joining us from our CEO Immediate Office as well to share updates on or from the National Partnership for Student Success.
Thanks, Colleen. Thanks for having me, everyone. Before we get started, I'm going to share last week we launched a P12 education newsletter that's focused on providing federal funding opportunities that live outside of AmeriCorps, tools or technical assistance that might be useful to those of you working in education. And that newsletter will include NPSS updates. So if you have not already subscribed, I just dropped the link in the chat so that you can. We can go to the next slide. Just a reminder, the President's call to action on July 5th last year was for AmeriCorps, the U.S. Department of Education, and our partners at the Everyone's Graduate Center at Johns Hopkins to help lead the work towards a goal of having an additional 250,000 caring, supported adults serving in these 5 evidence-based roles by 2025. And so just a reminder, those roles are as tutors, mentors, student success coaches, wraparound or integrated student support coordinators, and post-secondary transition coaches. And I won't read through each of those, but they are in the slides that I think you received before this call and will receive again after. So we can jump to the next slide. One thing that the NPSS has been really focused on as we think about getting those additional caring supported adults are where are the big sources of people power that we could be harnessing to support our P12 students. So to that end, we supported our partners at the U.S. Department of Education in May at releasing a call to action really for colleges and universities to dedicate more of their federal work study funding or other resources to having college students serve in these roles. So I'm going to drop a link to the letter that the Department of Ed issued aimed at colleges, universities, and school districts. But all of this lives on the National Partnership for Student Success Higher Ed webpage, which I've also linked here. And I should say it is aimed at colleges and universities, but there's lots of resources in there about how other organizations can partner with colleges and universities. So the real kind of the call to action here that they issued was for institutions of higher education to use at least 15% of their federal work study funding to compensate college students who are employed in those community service activities, those 5 roles that I mentioned, or to significantly increase the number of college students they have serving those roles regardless of funding source. And that was to recognize when some colleges and universities have more limited federal work study funds or may not have federal work study funding, but have other sources of funding that they could be using for this purpose. So in order for institutions of higher ed to do that, they need partners. So it also calls on school districts and out of school time providers to either establish or expand programs they have and to think about how they can partner with colleges and universities in filling roles. And then as a final piece of that, we do want to make sure that we're collecting data on both the number of individuals serving and the number of students served in these roles. And go to the next slide. So federal work study, I think some of you are very aware of, and we know we have lots of AmeriCorps partners that are working with higher education partners and utilizing federal work study alongside the AmeriCorps funding. But for some of you, it might be new. So at a very high level, and I'm going to share with you some resources if you want to dig in more here. Colleges and universities get funding for federal work study, but then they have a share that they have to cover as well. There are a couple of exceptions to that that are important, I think, to note when we think about this NPSS aligned work. It can be much more generous, frankly, for universities. They have much less to cover of their own share if they have students in these roles. So the federal share of federal work study compensation can be 100%. So no college or university share in this case if a college student is employed as a reading or math tutor for school-age children, or if they're performing family literacy or civic education activities. The federal share can be up to 90% for college students that are employed at nonprofits or at federal, state, or local public agencies, subject to some requirements that we've given the federal citation here, but there are going to be opportunities to dig in more there. So there really is an incentive here besides just a broad call to action and public recognition for doing this work. There is an incentive for colleges and universities to be placing more students in these roles as they think about their own budget and their own share of federal work study. And the letter did specifically reiterate again that the U.S. Department of Education funds can be used to fulfill matching requirements for AmeriCorps as well. Go to the next slide. So if you're interested in learning more about this work utilizing college students as tutors, mentors, student success coaches, and with P-12 students, there are a few ways you can get resources and support. The NPSS Hub, again, is providing no-cost technical assistance. That can be consultation, really digging into what does federal work study look like, how does it work, how do you set up relationships with colleges and universities. We can do matchmaking and networking to help you connect with colleges and universities that have already raised their hand to do this work. We had 26 institutions who on the day of the release of the letter set a public goal to meet these, but we have dozens of other colleges and universities that we're talking to who want to set a public goal, and we'll be looking for partners in the P-12 space. And then we have a number of tools and guidance that are on that website I linked, including a college and university partnership and implementation toolkit that's relevant to schools, school districts, nonprofit organizations. And then the National Student Support Accelerator has also put together a high impact tutoring higher ed institution playbook as well. Then go to the next slide. So like I said, federal work study may feel a little bit daunting or a little bit complicated if you haven't worked in that space. So to that end, we are hosting a webinar through the National Partnership for Student Success on June 21st. I'm dropping the registration link in the chat, but that webinar is specifically focused on nonprofits, schools, school districts to understand more about federal work study and how they might be partnering with colleges and universities. So I would encourage you, if you're even curious here, to join that webinar or register for it so that you can get a recording of the webinar if you're unable to make that specific time. And then also want to flag that, as I've mentioned on some of our prior calls, there's still opportunities for you to engage outside of federal work study, including join the NPSS as a champion. You can do that on our website. If you'll fill out a form, I'll drop the link in there. But we are, any organizations that join as a champion by July 1st will be recognizing as part of our one-year celebration in early July. So I'm going to stop there. I think my time is up, but do have a couple minutes for questions if there are any.
Thanks so much, Tara. Are there any questions for Tara?
I don't see any specific for Tara, Colleen. I just see a few for ASN that we can answer in the chat for folks.
Got it. Thanks, Dita. All right. Well, thanks so much, Tara, for joining, and we will be providing these notes in our follow-up email as well. So thanks, everyone. So we can move into our next update, which is with the Office of Grant Administration. So welcoming Lisa Bishop and Bonnie Janicki for these updates.
Thank you, Colleen. We have 3 updates today. I think the first one is definitely the most important and time sensitive, and it builds on where Sonali started us off today, which is around award processing. This is always the height of award processing for our AmeriCorps State and National grants. In an effort to award as many grants with ARP funding as we possibly could over the last week or so, we did include a lot more special conditions than we normally would. And so if you're newer, these are things that we put on awards to make those awards whole. They're typically actions that the grantees need to take in order to make that award truly whole. Sometimes it can be a compliance issue. It can be something that's maybe missing from the application or those kinds of things. And so I do want to just call attention to this. And so if you haven't looked at your notice of grant award that you've received in the last week, please see if there's a special condition on there and then act accordingly. Most of them are going to say follow up with your portfolio manager to address unresolved issues. Just want to say again, though, this is not a deviation from the agency's overall commitment to reducing the number of awards with special conditions. It's still a measure that we're evaluated on. But again, just in light of the issues around the debt ceiling and trying to get as many resources to communities that we possibly could, we did include a larger number of special conditions than normal. So we will include the specific language that was on the ARP related ones in the post-call notes. And again, just wanted folks to know that pay special attention if you did get a notice of grant award in the last week or so. And again, we feel like we're very comfortable with that decision, and it doesn't change our overall practice, but it is because it is outside of our normal practice, we wanted to call it out today. Also, in light of the work around the debt ceiling, which was really an all hands on deck by a number of offices, the revised due diligence e-course that we talked about here last month is still undergoing final revision. The Office of Grant Administration definitely wants to share that as quickly as possible, but it is not quite ready for prime time yet. So stay tuned for that. It will be posted on the Manager Grant website as soon as it's available. And we will also bring it to a future call, but just not sure of the timing of the completion with the call schedule. And then finally, we have an OGA staffing update. And that is after 7.5 years here at AmeriCorps, starting in what was both my hardest and most rewarding role as a grants officer. I'm actually going to be leaving AmeriCorps later this month. I've accepted a position as the Executive Director of Maryland Corps, which is part of Governor Moore's new service initiative in the state of Maryland. And so it's truly bittersweet to leave. Again, I see so many familiar names on here, many of whom were my grantees when I first started out. And I know we're on this journey together. So I'll just be doing it from a slightly different perch in my home state where I served as a VISTA and then worked at the Maryland Commission and later served as a commissioner. So just really want to say thank you for the continued partnership, for the grace you continue to give all of us here at the agency. I'm really proud to be going out on a note of true collaboration across this agency to support resources getting into communities really at record pace while still making sure that we're safeguarding federal funds. And so with that, those are OGA's updates this month, Colleen.
Thanks so much, Lisa. It's certainly bittersweet to be leaving you and so thrilled for you as you move to your next position. Appreciating all the love for Lisa in the chat. Pausing briefly here if there are any questions for OGA based on what Lisa shared. Lisa, there's a question here on who will be the OGA interim.
Thank you. Probably the most important update. Amy Hetrick, who many of you know and know well, is our deputy director. She has graciously agreed to serve as the acting director while they look for a permanent director. So, and you'll be in great hands with Amy, with Bonnie, with many other folks who you know. And again, for our grantees, our portfolio managers really are the first line of support always. And so they will still have the benefit of Amy and Bonnie and team, but know that you can always go to your portfolio manager first.
Thanks, Lisa, and thanks for the question. Okay, I'm not seeing any additional questions, so we will keep things moving. So next up, we have some updates from AmeriCorps State and National that I will kick off if we can go to the next slide. So a couple weeks ago, we emailed you all about a new e-course that we launched, Developing Policies and Procedures, a resource for AmeriCorps State and National grantees. The course was born out of requests from grantees for a one-stop shop where folks could review ASN policy and procedure requirements. And the design of the course was informed by the collaborative work of AmeriCorps State and National, the Office of Regional Operations, the Office of Grant Administration, and the Office of Monitoring. We're excited about the course design because it allows you to click through all of the policies, or you can just visit the ones you're interested in learning about. We also developed a corresponding workbook so that you can move through the course while drafting your required policies or brushing up on your current policies. The course is housed on AmeriCorps' learning management system, Litmos, and all are free to request an account and access the course. We're dropping the link. Steve dropped the link to the course in the chat, so definitely check it out when you have a moment and bookmark it to flag as you're brushing up or writing your new policies and procedures. So we can go to the next slide. So next up, we have some other ASN updates for you all, leading with an update on our symposium. So we're still working on identifying specific dates for symposium, but we can share now that symposium will likely happen in either September or November. We're confident we'll have a date for you before our next grantee call in July, and we'll be in touch as soon as it's set. So if the date is confirmed prior to the call, you'll be the first to know. In other symposium news, last week we launched our Excellence in AmeriCorps Award nominations, and we hope you'll all consider nominating individuals and programs for our 4 award categories. Those nominations are due on July 31st, and awardees will be recognized at symposium. We also wanted to share on another topic, a brief update on our Disability Accommodation Fund. For this year, AmeriCorps State and National budgeted $100,000 for disability accommodation funds. We've received requests for 2,784 funds, leaving $97,216 of funds remaining. To submit a request for disability accommodation funds, please follow the instructions via the link that I'm about to drop into the chat. And for our next 2 updates, I'm going to pass it to our Deputy Director of AmeriCorps State and National, Jennifer Bastris-Thomas-Aby.
Thanks, Colleen. So one of the internal processes that occurs at AmeriCorps is a debrief of CEO travel once the trip is over. The CEO's shop determines who is invited to each debrief based on the follow-up items. ASN was invited to one recently, and 3 things that ASN grantees and partners sought clarification on from the CEO are being covered during this call. The first was the one that Colleen just gave about disability accommodation funds. The second is about workforce development programs. If your program has approved objectives about the promotion of employment among its participants, these members are eligible for a prorated service award if they accept an employment opportunity. This information is found at 45 CFR 2522.230. The third thing that AmeriCorps State and National grantees and partners sought clarification on was a benefit to business. AmeriCorps State and National and the Office of General Counsel are delighted to announce a benefit to business open house on Friday, June 23rd from 1 to 3 p.m. We welcome grantees to bring to us their plans for service they would like to do or are doing in their communities that they have concerns would be disallowed due to benefit to business. We will take notes, ask any clarifying questions so we can better understand what people are proposing and are doing, and commit to getting back to all who bring program proposals with a decision about allowability. The timing for a final answer will be dependent on how many presentations occur. Our goal is to demystify the process, get people quick answers to actual proposals, and perhaps do some myth busting about what is possible. We will be sending out information shortly with a process for grantees to sign up for a time slot. State commissions are welcome to sign up and bring their sub-grantees to present. We will not entertain state commission sub-grantee proposals unless their commission signs them up. If you or your subs are not available on June 23rd, you can submit your program proposals via email. Instructions will be included for that option as well. And should there be high demand, we will schedule another office hours. Thank you.
Thanks, Jennifer. Before I move forward, apologies. My internet was in and out when I was sharing some very anticipated information. So I shared again in the chat, our target months for ASN Symposium are either September or November of 2023. I saw a question about fee. There is no fee to attend symposium. This would have been budgeted in your budget for the upcoming year. And in terms of number of participants, we'll be releasing that information as we roll out the date. And I see another question, Jennifer. What is benefit to business? If you'd like to answer that one.
Sorry, I should have led with that. So one of the prohibited activities is service that benefits business. There have been examples of things that grantees or sub-grantees wanted to do in the past that did benefit business, but there was extenuating circumstances that made it an allowable activity. People have been concerned in the past, perhaps not even bringing to the agency or their PMs or their SPMs things that they're interested in doing due to their concerns, which we appreciate, related to not doing prohibited activities. That said, we have been able to approve things that did have some ancillary effect to benefit to business. So again, want to open up the opportunity for people to bring projects that they are doing or they hope to do, learn more about it and be able to provide them an answer. Thank you.
Thanks, Jennifer. I believe I see some feedback on the disability accommodation page. Thank you, Michael. Appreciate that. And I will drop in the chat my line about how much funding was available and how much is remaining in a minute. I am going to appreciate all the questions, and we'll follow up with all of this via email as well. I'm going to keep us moving in the agenda. So next up, we have our What's the Buzz section. And this month, we're going to be sharing some resources on member management. And we're excited to introduce you to a portfolio manager from the Mid-Atlantic region, Annie Dekluski, who will be sharing the resources. Annie, it's all yours.
Hi, everyone. My name is Annie Dekluski, and like Colleen said, I'm a portfolio manager in the Mid-Atlantic region. For this month's edition of What's the Buzz, we're focusing on member management. So if we could go to the next slide, please. Thank you. As many of you gear up for a new program year, we thought it could be helpful to share a few existing resources as well as tips from other grantees to support your management of members. And we will be sharing out these links to these resources in the call notes after the call. Okay, let's walk through some existing resources that could support your preparation for a new program year. Right now, you may be in the process of reviewing or preparing your member position descriptions or member service agreements. The member position description and service agreement outlines could be a helpful tool as you're doing your review. These outlines include requirements as well as suggestions and best practices for these documents. As you prepare for service site or operating site onboarding and orientation, the service site agreement outline could be a helpful tool. The service site agreement outline includes requirements as well as suggestions and best practices. The Developing Policies and Procedures e-learning course that Colleen highlighted earlier also has information about supporting policy development for managing service sites and operating sites. And also, as Colleen shared, you can skip right to the section that you need. So you don't need to review the full course to check out information about managing sites. As you refine your member hours tracking processes, check out the member timesheet outline. Similar to the other outlines, this outline includes requirements as well as best practices. The Developing Policies and Procedures e-learning course also goes into detail on policy requirements and considerations for tracking member hours. And while we'll be sharing, like I said, links to these documents in the call notes, if you would like to locate these resources on the website, you in the resources section, filter by selecting manage members. You can see a screen capture of the section here on the slide. The developing policies and procedures e-learning course is under a different filter. It's the access program tools filter. Okay, let's move to the next slide and move on to tips for supporting members. As you prepare for a new cohort of members, you may be considering how to enhance your program's member retention strategy. Grantees in my portfolio have shared a few tips for supporting members, and I'm excited to share some of these with you now. The first is member committees. So in this example, a member committee is a group of members who are basically there to help other members feel recognized and supported to build like team spirit. This group could lead team building activities during member get-togethers or member birthday recognition or something like maybe a Friendsgiving celebration or the holidays. Another tip is something that this grantee calls member solutions circles. These circles are a space for members to connect and support each other. In the group, discussions range from service-specific barriers to broader professional development support, like, how do I talk to my supervisor about this issue that I'm facing, to other tips and just general kind of life hack type things. And finally, I've heard that supporting members using a coaching and goal-oriented approach helps members to connect their term of service with their overall career goals. And this supports members in overcoming barriers. This program director that I spoke with takes this goal-oriented approach from pre-service orientation and carries it through check-in meetings throughout the member's term of service. If the member comes to the program director with an issue, his approach is, how do we solve this problem together? And ask the member for suggested solutions. Okay, that's it for this month's edition of What's the Buzz? Thanks.
Thanks so much, Annie. Really appreciate the really helpful resources and you sharing. So we can go to the next slide, the next update. So rounding out our updates, we have Cleo Hirsch here today from Public Health AmeriCorps.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for having me. My name is Cleo Hirsch. I'm one of the Deputy Directors of Public Health AmeriCorps. If we can go on to the next slide, we just have one quick update today. We will be hosting a webinar on the foundations of managing a Public Health AmeriCorps grant on June 13th at 3 p.m. Eastern. That's a week from today. And during the webinar, we will introduce the Public Health AmeriCorps team, identify resources and tools to help you manage your grant, provide an overview of key grantee tasks and responsibilities, and we'll highlight a few important considerations as you plan to embark on your first or second year as a Public Health AmeriCorps grantee. So again, that's June 13th at 3 p.m. Eastern time, and we hope that you will join us. Thanks, Colleen.
Thanks so much, Cleo. So we can move into our next section, which is question and answer. And we'll be sure, actually, before we do that, I'm gonna, I see a quick question for Cleo here. Cleo, come back if you're still there. Who should we contact for technical assistance about the PHA CDC Train platform? We have members who are having issues accessing.
Yes, please go ahead and email our program email address, publichealth@americorps.gov. And some of the questions will have to be directed to our partners at the CDC, whereas some of them our training manager can answer directly. So just go ahead and send any questions like that to our program email address, and we will, put you in touch with the right folks and make sure you get the support you need. And in general, that's a good chance to make a plug for that email address. Of course, any questions, comments, or concerns you have, you can reach us there.
Thanks, Cleo. And I see a comment here regarding state commissions with new PHA grantees. Would this be helpful to know the nuances of how it differs from standard ASN grants? I'll share that PHA grantees are AmeriCorps State and National grantees. So all of that is the same. And I believe the session that PHA is hosting next week. We'll cover some of the additional benefits that Public Health AmeriCorps offers. And I do believe that they record all of their calls. So they will follow up. We'll make sure that there's follow-up on there if you're not able to make that session. So we're going to move into our question and answer. And for any questions still lingering in the chat, we have Seda collecting them, and hopefully we can get to them at the end. So we just had one pre-submitted question. If we could go to the next slide. So the question is for our Office of Grant Administration, and it is, we no longer receive notifications when notice of grant awards are issued in e-grants. Last year, we were told that this step was being skipped due to the large volume of awards that were being processed at the same time. Is there a plan to start the notifications again? As a state commission, we could have a number of pending awards at any given time. We now have to go into e-grants to constantly check to see if an award has been processed. The notifications are helpful, especially if we have pending amendments and we are unaware that they have been awarded. So before Lisa leaves us, we're going to have her respond to this question.
Thanks, Colleen. Actually, we're very grateful for this question. Just to be crystal clear, if you don't know, excuse me, the Office of Grant Administration is the one that actually obligates funds and issues awards via those notice of grant awards and e-grants. And so we do not skip this step. We never have skipped this step. It's actually critical because it binds us to you and vice versa. And it's something that OGA is tested on as part of our own internal controls testing every year. I will say that in the past, we have had individual issues where for some reason those notifications aren't going out. We learn of them usually through portfolio managers. So if you have not received them, as particularly if you're in e-grants and see that you've gotten a notice of grant award that you didn't get an email notification about, what I would want to make sure of is, first of all, that, I should say, share that they go to the authorized representative and the project director that are listed in e-grants. So it's important that it be those two people. Anyone else on your team would have to go in and look at it or get the email notification from your authorized rep or your project director. But again, we issue them at the time we make the awards. There have been glitches in the past. And so if you have a glitch and you find something in there, that notice of grant award that you see in e-grants that you actually didn't get notification of via your email, please reach out to the National Service Hotline and let them know the application ID because they can go in and look. There's no good explanation for it other than it's e-grants. I guess it's fitting that maybe my last question is e-grants related here. But anyway, please know we're not skipping that step. It's actually very critical and it's something that we're held accountable for. So I really don't know what else to say on this one, Colleen, other than just making sure folks are aware that it should be the authorized representative and project director that are getting those notifications. And if you're not for some reason, please report it to the National Service Hotline so that they can look into it.
Thanks so much, Lisa, and thanks for the question. So we're going to move into open Q&A. Seda has flagged a couple of questions for me. Before I dive in, I just want to address, I believe it was Michael's comment about the outdated outlines on the website. I see it's related to branding. If you see, we did a big sweep of a lot of the outlines on AmeriCorps.gov under ASN just this past fall. So if you are seeing things to broken links, if you can email us at ASN Training, I'll take a look at what you're writing in the chat as well and follow up. There might be things that we missed. And if you're clicking around and seeing things, if you want to just let us know, we'll go ahead and take care of those. So thank you. First question that we wanted to address is related to the Excellence in AmeriCorps Awards, and it is, are they available to serve as alumni or for currently serving members? These awards are not just for members, they could be program staff, they could be alumni. So you can nominate any individual who fits the description of the award, and we will, you can check out the nomination form. I can link to it before we wrap up this call. So moving in, those were all of our chat questions. Thanks to the ASN team and others for working hard in there to answer all of those questions. Moving to the raised hand. So if you have a question, you want to raise your hand, we will unmute you. So we'll start with Jacqueline. I see Jacqueline's hand is up.
Hello, thank you. Lisa, I got two questions for you. Couldn't let you leave AmeriCorps without a few extra questions. First question is, if we have not received competitive awards for FY23 yet, should we be worried? It sounds like there was a flurry of awards being made, but we haven't gotten ours yet.
Thank you for the question, Jacqueline. You shouldn't be. ORO is actually not scheduled to complete their work until June 23rd. We just, as an agency, prioritized as many that had ARP funding as possible. So again, we're still doing everything we can internally to move forward. Certainly any awards that don't have ARP funding, but if they do have ARP funding, they're getting moved all the way to the Office of Grant Administration, and then we're holding them until we have further guidance from OMB that Sonali mentioned.
Okay. Thank you. And then second question is, I know I've been working with our portfolio manager, and it sounds like other commissions are as well, about resolutions on formula awards related to our eligibility to take the 2%. And what I am gathering is an incorrect calculation of how that's being calculated in terms of how much we've spent on our CSG commission support grant. And just curious if there's an update on that getting resolved.
Yeah, so we thought this question might come up in the commission only call, but happy to answer it. Happy to answer it here. As kind of we've said throughout this call, our real priority last week was around the processing of awards with ARP funding, but we recognize this is a really time-sensitive issue and expect to turn something around within the next day or so as well, to figure out exactly what the confusion is and then do any clarifications that need to happen as a part of that.
Okay, thanks, Lisa.
Sure.
Thanks, Jacqueline. Thanks, Lisa. Feel free, raise your hand if you have additional questions. Seda, do we have additional questions in the chat?
Yes, we have a question from Jamie around when final rules will be published when there were proposed revisions to the Ed Award rules in the Federal Register. When will final rules be published? And do we know the years covered for people exiting if they do become effective?
I'm not aware of those updates. Jennifer, are you aware or have information? Anyone else on the ASN team?
Well, I signed up to get Federal Register notifications when our agency posts. So I am aware, but I will find out from the office that submitted those what the time frame is, and we can include that in the notes. Thank you for the question.
Thanks, Jennifer.
And I see another question from Sarah here. Will you share a flow chart of each funding stream, the process for reviewing, processing them, awarding those? I think that's for OGA, for if Lisa's still here.
I'm sorry, can you say that again? I'm missing it in the chat.
Absolutely. Is there a flow chart for each of the funding streams with the process for reviewing, processing, and awarding?
I think we have shared that on prior calls, and we can certainly bring it back to a future call, sure. But I think I can give you the high level now and Jennifer may want to chime in here too, but any award that has funding, so there's different paths depending on whether it's a new award or an amendment, but generally any kind of new award that goes through a GART process is the portfolio manager is going to do a certification, then the senior portfolio manager, then it goes to our Office of Budget. They actually commit the funds, and then it comes to the Office of Grant Administration, and we obligate the funds and then issue the notices of grant awards. So I don't know if that is at a super high level, but those are the steps in the process. And when that portfolio manager is doing their certification, what they are basically saying is that the grantee has resolved all the issues that came up during resolution. Again, the exception is what we just did in the last week or so because we had other circumstances, but generally that portfolio manager doesn't certify the award until they can confirm that all resolution items have been addressed. So I hope that answers the question.
Thanks, Lisa. Thanks, Seda. Are we seeing any other additional questions in the chat?
Yes, I did just see one. Actually, two have come in, sorry. From Bob is a question. How do I resolve an issue with PMs when no one at PMS is getting back to me? PMS.
I'm sorry to hear that. I would definitely go to the PMS help desk because they should be able to get you to someone if your liaison isn't responsive. We know that they sometimes have challenges with customer service, but please, go to the PMS help desk, and if that still doesn't get you resolution, reach out to your portfolio manager and then they can follow up with us. But generally speaking, the PMS help desk is going to be the best option for any PMS related issues. And Bob, it looks like you've already tried that. I would contact your portfolio manager and let them know if you haven't already, and then we can try to work with them. We don't have any magic powers with the payment management system, and they are undergoing some major changes around reporting and other services. And so I think it's a bit of a struggle, but we want to make sure folks have access to their funds for sure.
Thanks, Lisa. Seda, do you have the next question?
Yes, I've seen a few more questions have come through asking for a repeat of the answer around the rules for leaving for employment mid-service and receiving a prorated ed award. Jennifer, if you want to share that. I'm sorry, I couldn't find it in the chat to reshare the answer.
Sure, no, I was coming on camera to say, I'm not quite sure I understand the question that people are asking. So one of the updates that I gave was that if your program has approved objectives about the promotion of employment among participants, these members are eligible for a prorated education award if they accept an employment opportunity. Meaning they can use, I'm just looking at the CFR, they can use a compelling personal circumstance. That's one of the compelling personal circumstances. So the compelling personal circumstance related to employment is the same thing. So if anybody wants to jump on and explain the clarification they're looking for, I'm happy to take a crack at it, but I'm not sure I understand. Oh, approved objectives. So that would be your performance measures. Sorry, somebody asked, approved objectives may need more clarity for some. So that's about your performance measures. Does that answer people's questions? Sarah? Rita? If not, feel free to follow up with me directly. I'm happy to provide further clarification.
Thanks, Jennifer. I see Allison has a hand raised. Allison, is the question related to, can we unmute Allison? I know that I saw a comment related to what you just talked about.
I'm sorry, I created a confusing question that was, apologies for that. What I was interested in is whether or not in other circumstances, let's say education, we're in the education space at City Year, and we have a number of Corps who get hired by their schools, and they get hired prior to the end of their term of service. So the rules right now say you don't get any of your education award if that's the condition that you're leaving for employment. And it seems like it's maybe an opportunity, the B2B discussion might be an opportunity to talk about that restriction. So I wondered if it was appropriate to bring it up during that session. That was really all my question was.
Got it, Allison. Totally understand the question. So currently the agency is not contemplating an additional change to a prorated award if it's not employment is not part of the makeup of your program.
Objective.
I think what we're balancing is we also want people to stay till the end because they have programs. You all have made commitments to communities for service to occur. That said, should there be a groundswell of people that want to talk about that, I am confident that Sonali would welcome having that conversation.
That's great. Thanks, JVT.
Thanks, Allison. Thanks, Jennifer. So let's take one more question. I saw there was one higher up that we missed. Seda, do you want to cue that up?
Queued up for us. It's related to the question around formula resolutions. Fully understanding the need to focus on ARP last week, will the agency extend the deadline to account this timing related to formula resolutions?
So full disclosure, I have not been in the conversations as this has been talked about, so I don't want to commit on behalf of OGA and ASN and ORO, but we will certainly take that under consideration. with any follow-up information that we put out. And again, our goal is to get it out within the next day or so. So we hear you and we will take that under consideration. We also don't think it impacts all commissions in the same way as it's true in a lot of circumstances.
Thanks, Lisa, and thanks for the question. Thanks for your support. Seda, so I did see this question come up quite a few times, so I just wanted to address it in case folks missed it in the chat. We have several questions regarding our email list and getting onto that email list. So I'll put it in the chat one last time, but to get on the email list, you need to update your information in eGrants. So your email and your name is in your program information. We generate those email lists every time we send a communication right out of eGrants. So if you're still struggling or having challenges figuring that out, please connect with your portfolio manager and they should be able to help. So that's all the time we have today. So I'm going to pass it to Sonali to close us out.
Thank you, Colleen, and thank you everyone for this, for the great questions and lively engagement. I do want to just take a minute to thank Lisa for her work and commitment to the agency for the last 7.5 years and beyond. We are wishing you well. It most certainly is bittersweet, but we are excited for all that you will have the opportunity to do in Maryland, in your home state, and look forward to working with Amy as she takes on this acting role. So thank you again, Lisa. Just want to express our appreciation. Also, I want to thank Adrian Andrews, our Deputy Chief of Staff for Strategic Engagement, for joining us today to give you a very quick sneak peek at all the incredible work her and her team are doing to lead our 30th anniversary celebrations. Adrian will be joining and hosting our entire July call next month. So we look forward to having you, Adrian, engage and share a lot more detail with our incredible grantees. So thank you, Adrian, and thank you to all of you for all the work you are doing and all the ways you are supporting and having impact in communities across the country. We really, really appreciate it and appreciate the opportunity to do this work and have this time with all of you. So with that, I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day and a wonderful June. Take care.